What do you say, everybody? And welcome to the Bama Insider YouTube channel, or maybe you're listening on a podcast. We appreciate you being here. This is the Alabama rival site, Bama Insider with Tony Tsoukalas. I'm Mick Gillespie. As you watch on YouTube today, please give us a thumbs up and subscribe. We're trying to get to 50,000 subscribers on YouTube, and we are closing in, and it's because of you guys. So appreciate all the loyalty that you've had to this site, whether you're a big Alabama fan or you love college football or college sports. We love having you here. This is Bama Factor, our daily show that we're going to put on YouTube throughout the season. And we just got it cranked up last week, and there's always something to talk about. And today we're going to get into this Alabama basketball team that had a pretty tough, hard-fought win last night over Kentucky. The team now to 10 games in a row of wins in the SEC, and that's something that they haven't accomplished in a long, long time. We're going to talk about their next matchup against Oklahoma. The Senior Bowl is coming up. A lot of Alabama players are in Mobile right now, getting ready for the NFL draft, where everyone's going to go. Mel Kiper Jr., one of my favorite let's say columnist. I guess now he's just kind of a draft expert from ESPN, has some guys projected to go somewhere. And today, Alabama's football schedule comes out for next year. And the Swami, Tony Tsoukalas, feels like he's got a pretty good idea what we're going to look like. So he's Tony Tsoukalas. He's our beat writer for Bama Insider and BamaInsider.com. I'm Mick Gillespie. Tony, great to see you. Let's talk about this Bama basketball team. They sweep Kentucky for the first time in over 30 years with a 70-59 win. It makes a 10-game winning streak for them, and it's the longest winning streak since the start of the 96-97 season. But they're totally different because the 96 and the 97 team beat a bunch of cupcakes at the beginning of the schedule. Alabama's running right through the SEC.
Oh, they definitely are. And that 70-59 win, that was a lot closer than it looks on the final score, too. Alabama closed out at, I think, like an 18-5 run, and that definitely made that game a lot tighter than it looked. But yeah, this Alabama team, it's great. It's projected as, a number 2 seed in, I think, Lenardi's bracket, and it's definitely a team that is clicking on all cylinders, and I think is going to be really tough out in March. And it's tearing through this SEC schedule. They've got 9 wins in conference. They didn't have 9 wins in conference all of last year. So it's really something special that they're putting together this year.
Yeah, it's been a long time since Alabama won the SEC, and there's still a lot of basketball to be played. They're off to a tremendous start. They have just found some momentum. I'm going to throw up this comment here from Brian. He says, missing Rojas and Bruner. When will those 2 players return? Do you have any insight on when Alabama may get those guys back?
Well, Rojas played 2 minutes last night, so he's, I guess, back, but obviously not 100% back, and he didn't really influence the game at all. As far as Jordan Bruner, he's progressing nicely. I mean, he's taking shots during warm-ups, so you got to think he was out. I think what was that first game against Kentucky is about a few weeks ago, and then it seems like everything that Nate Oates is saying that his prognosis was 4 to 6 weeks, but Nate Oates seems to be leaning more towards the 4. So I think they might be getting Jordan Bruner back in the relatively near future, maybe a week or so. It seems like he's not game ready, but he's been able to take part in warmups, which I think is a great sign coming off a knee injury. So I think, to answer your question, maybe not totally directly, is I think Alabama, as we enter the next month, will be closer and closer to 100%.
Last night, you saw Shackelford with 21. Primo had 10. But it just seems like this team, when they've needed someone to step up, it's been John Petty. I love the experience that Alabama has, and you compare them to Kentucky. Kentucky's got a court full of guys who are, 4- and 5-star prospects, right? But Alabama's got these guys with experience, and it has really paid off for them this season, kind of having guys that have been there before.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, look, John Petty's an experienced guy. Herb Jones is a really experienced guy, and he almost had a triple-double last night. I think he came 2 assists and a rebound away from a triple-double. So I think Alabama leans on those guys for leadership, not only during tough times, but just really to keep the team on track. I mean, when you're winning 10 games in a row, 9 conference games in a row, sometimes, younger players, they lose focus. Or on games like Kentucky last night, where, sometimes players that shoot better, when they're struggling, sometimes the rest of their game falters as well. And Alabama didn't have that. And I think that's, really a sign of maturity. And I think that probably stems from the seniors, like you mentioned.
Yeah, I mean, it really is something when you take a look at what Alabama's been able to do, and we talked about a little bit that the last time Alabama won 10 games in a row was the 96-97 season, which I remember. I mean, and they got off to a fast start and, ended up finishing that season horribly bad. I mean, with a 6-10 conference record, and they were 17-14 overall. But I mean, these are the wins that they had that year to start the season. I mean, just to give you an idea compared to what they're doing now. But they ran off 10 wins against UNC Wilmington, Southern Illinois, Middle Tennessee, Northern Illinois. So they beat Southern Illinois and Northern Illinois. Arkansas, Pine Bluff, Minnesota was ranked 16th that year. They beat them at Coleman Coliseum by a couple points. FIU, Western Carolina, North Texas, and VCU. And that was before VCU was any good. And then after that, they just went on a long losing streak and, never really found a groove. But I mean, you compare that to this team, and they've beaten Kentucky twice. And I know this isn't one of Kentucky's, best seasons, but it's still Kentucky. I mean, you look at that team and they're just loaded with talent. And I thought last night when I'm watching the game and I'm thinking, that Kentucky team has players. I mean, you look at the, kind of the talent that they have. They haven't put it together yet, but I expect that at some point, Kentucky's going to be good. So, my point is that I give Alabama a lot of credit for winning beating Kentucky twice. It's still Kentucky,
Oh, definitely. I mean, they've got players. This Kentucky team's not a great team. It's not clicking. It's probably one of the worst Kentucky teams we've seen in a long while. But that being said, they have players, and it's still hard to beat a team twice. It's hard to beat a coach like Coach Cal twice. You know what I'm saying? He's gonna scheme and learn off his mistakes and get those players, those talented players, to play in a way that's going to disrupt Alabama. That's what they did Tuesday night. And look, there was that stat about Alabama in the last 5 years having 3 games where they beat an SEC opponent by 15 or more on the road, only to lose at home. And that almost looked like it was going to be the case Tuesday night. And I think real kudos to Alabama to kind of recenter itself and win a game it was supposed to win. Look, that would have been a quad 3 loss last night. And those kind of losses really put a dent in your resume. I know Alabama's resume is super great right now, and it could have survived a dent, but you don't want those kind of losses on your books. And for Alabama to kind of avoid that heading into a big time game against Oklahoma this weekend, I think that was a big step right there.
He's Tony Tsoukalas. I'm Mick Gillespie. Welcome to the Bama Insider YouTube channel as we talk about this Alabama basketball team. Let me throw this guy up here, Nate Oates, right? Ballin' Oates. He's really, I mean, I got to give the guy a lot of credit. He's just brought in, so much fire to this team. And this blue collar mentality, like, hey, I want to be the guy who makes, the diving save and goes, the extra mile to help my team. The players have bought into it. I mean, when you watch professional sports and a lot of college sports, it's hard to get there because, everybody wants to be the star, but who wants to be the guy that gets dirty? He's found something with these guys where you can tell that no matter what happens, they've bought into the fact that, that it takes doing the dirty work to be successful.
Definitely. Look, like the last game was a big, example of that, where Alabama, they only had 6 threes. I mean, look, this is a team that hit 23 threes against LSU, proves it can win that way, but it also can win when it's not making threes, and it didn't shoot well. It missed its first 6 shots after the break. against Kentucky, and they were just floundering, and the defense kept them in the game. Kentucky couldn't take advantage of that. Alabama was able to hang and keep its advantage, or even fall behind just by just a little bit. And then look, they get a turnover, transition buckets, another stop, some more points, and they end the game on a run like they did, and they were able to pull it off. But that's all because of the defense. It's all because that blue collar mentality that Nate Oates brings to the team, and that it won them a game last night. It's probably going to win them a lot more games in the future.
All right, let me run through this, and then we're going to talk about their next game. But this is the 10-game winning streak that Alabama's on right now. They beat East Tennessee State, which can be a tough team to play at times. But then after that, it's been all SEC teams. Ole Miss, they beat Tennessee, who at the time was ranked in the top 10. Right? Florida, at Auburn, at Kentucky, Arkansas, of course, that game at LSU where they blew them out, 105-75, Mississippi State and Kentucky. Those are the last two games. They've been grinded out games. Both of them, 81-73, Bama beat Mississippi State, Kentucky 70-59. They've been more impressive to me than the other wins, just because, the shots haven't been falling, but they still have played defense and basically out hustled teams that in some cases are bigger than them. But they've got a real test coming up Saturday in the SEC Big 12 Challenge. They're going to be in Norman to play Oklahoma. And it was Oklahoma last night that took on Texas, and it kind of sets up for this really big football game that's basketball, right? Two of the biggest football schools playing basketball. When you put those names out there, and this year in basketball, it's a great matchup. Yeah,
two football schools that are both doing surprisingly well in basketball. I mean, I think heading into the season, you knew Alabama was going to have a good team. You knew Oklahoma was going to have a good team, but you probably didn't know that they were both going to be at this stage during this game. I think, when they do the SEC Big 12 rankings, they rank them when they do those matchups, they try to find teams that, match up with each other. And I don't necessarily think that they would have, these people might have been playing, different opponents. But I think that Oklahoma is also in a surprise. They're coming off back-to-back wins over top 10 opponents. They beat Kansas, and then they just beat Texas on the road by a point last night as well. So they were only on a 3-game winning streak, but they're beating some quality opponents as well. It's going to be a tough game in Norman. Nate Oates talked about, as great as it is to rack up these conference wins, getting that extra. I think it would be a quad 1 win. On Saturday, in January, picking up a, quad 1 non-conference win in January. That's huge. So I think that'd go a long way for Alabama's resume if they're trying to earn this number 2 seed, or maybe even try to get into a number 1 seed, just trying to get as that highest seed as possible. Wins like Oklahoma, I think that will go a long way on the resume.
Yeah, no, I agree with you too. I mean, I'm not convinced that the SEC is any good at basketball.
It's definitely a down year. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, I mean, I know Tennessee's, is good, but they're not great. And you got Missouri and I don't know who else after that. I mean, Alabama's pretty good, but this is a real litmus test. And you're right. I mean, Oklahoma's going for a 3rd straight win over top 10 teams. You beat Kansas and you beat Texas, and then you beat top-ranked Alabama. That's that looks pretty good on the resume. But for the Crimson Tide, kind of stepping out of conference and playing against one of the best and hottest teams in the country's a good test to see exactly where this team is right now.
Definitely. Norman's going to be a tough place to win, and Alabama's banged up too. We talked a little bit about getting Bruner back, but he's not back. And then you've got Rojas, who's coming off of medical condition. You've got Herb Jones, who's like they're taping body parts together, it seems like. He's banged up. Alex Reese was banged up after a collision during the Kentucky game. And so you got a lot of guys, they're active, but man, they're probably feeling it in the morning when they wake up. They're sore. And it's going to be tough to continue to grind out games like that when you've got so many people kind of bruised up. But Alabama can do it. It's just that also adds, when you're playing a team like Oklahoma, you really want to be at full strength, and it's going to be a difficult trip to Norman.
Alabama and Oklahoma get together on Saturday. You can watch it on ESPN2. and that will be an 11 o'clock Central Time tip. So that'll be a lot of fun. Hey, guys, as you watch, give us a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel. You're hanging out with us on Bama Insider. This is, our brand new show that we're going to run every single day called the Bama Factor Daily. So sometimes I'll host, sometimes Kyle will host, Trey. And today it's Wednesday with Mick and Tony as we talk Alabama hoops. So let's switch gears to the Senior Bowl, which is not too far from where I'm at right now, just across the bay in Mobile. Alabama with a ton of interest in this game. First off, because it's in our state, most of the players in the game come from all over the country, but it just so happens to be in Mobile in the state of Alabama, home of the 18-time national champion Crimson Tide. Say that with a smile. Let's start with DeVonta Smith. He made headlines, first off, because he's the Heisman Trophy winner. But second of all, Tony says, you know what, I'm not going to weigh in because I'm not going to take part in the height and weight deal. I've seen other players do that. Kyler Murray, didn't he avoid some of that stuff before being drafted number 1 by Arizona? And, a lot of times you see these guys weigh in. And, for Smith, I got a feeling that he's worried about being lighter than what some NFL people would want him to be, I guess. I'm looking at it like that. But he's injured right now with the finger that he had surgery on, a dislocation that happened in the national championship game. And you see him and Najee hanging out on the sideline here in Mobile.
So I think the thing with DeVonta Smith, and he's going to be light. He's going to be light when he weighs in at Alabama's pro day, or he's going to be light here. But he is hurt. Who knows? He might not have been able to work out, so he might have lost additional weight. If you don't weigh in now, you'll have some time to bulk up a little bit before Alabama's pro day. And the other thing is, if he's hurt, if he's not doing anything, why let the narrative be about how light you are with nothing else to back it up? If he comes out and measures in really light at Alabama's pro day, well, then he can have the whole pro day as well to go through drills to kind of take the attention back off of, hey, this guy's a little small for the NFL, back into like, oh, wait a minute. Yeah, this guy's one of the best receivers we've seen in the NFL, And so yeah. I think that, it might be a smart decision for him. Look, the narrative around him is always going to be that he is light. But you also got to look at what he can do on the football field. And I think that's what a lot of people that have seen him, I mean, that's what they'll say. Is it always great to have a receiver that's that small? No, but DeVonta Smith's not just any typical receiver, and he can do so many things on a football field. I don't necessarily think it's going to hurt him, and I don't think it was a bad decision to not weigh in, because elsewise, I mean, you run the risk of that being the whole talk around him for up until Alabama's pro day is just about him being small. So you really want to kind of control the narrative of your own, especially heading into these next few months before the draft. And so as a business decision, I think it was probably the smart move.
Well, he's the Heisman Trophy winner. We're going to get into Mel Kiper's big board, but DeVonta Smith has certainly shot to the top of that. There's 2 guys that are trying to move up or, get a top 15, 20 draft status. One of them is talking to Smitty right there on our screen with the picture of Najee Harris, running back for Alabama. What do you think about Najee's current stock value?
I think it's going to come down to it's really weird because you look at it, and I think he's battling with Travis Etienne as the best back in this class, and I think he is the best back in this class. But it comes down to who needs a running back in the first round, and are they willing to take a running back in the first round? It's entirely possible that there's only one, or I mean, heck, maybe even 0 running backs taken in the first round. I don't think it will be 0. But it's not a position that's drafted a lot in the first round anymore, as we saw last year. So if it comes down to it, the only thing I can really see Najee's stock hurting is if it comes down to a team that maybe prioritizes Travis Etienne in the first round, and so they take him, and then Najee would slip to the second, I guess. But look, when you look at what Najee Harris can do on the football field as well, he's a guy that can hurt you in so many different ways. He's a bigger back, but he can catch the ball out of the backfield. He can catch the ball if you line him up as a receiver as well. He's really proven a lot in the last 2 years, and I'd like to think that he would be a first round pick, but like I said, it could be a little bit circumstantial depending on, how things play out. But he definitely has first round talent, and he's definitely improved his draft stock over the last 2 years.
Yeah, I agree. And I also think what separates him from a lot of the other running backs is, look, this guy's super intelligent. Not to say that some of the other guys aren't, but, you're not going to really have to worry about anything off the field with him. As a matter of fact, he's a leader on the team. He's a very smart guy. He's the type of guy that you would want in your organization, and so I think that helps him out a lot too. Add it to the fact that he's a great football player is that, he's a student and, someone that, could help lead on and off the field for an organization. So, that certainly makes him someone that if you were going to take a risk on a first round pick and you needed a running back, would make you a lot more comfortable with that. The other guy we got to keep an eye on is obviously quarterback Mac Jones. And, you've been kind of on the Mac train for a long time. I obviously have talked about this many times on our shows, was late there. I mean, I couldn't believe that, that he had the season he did. And I honestly, I would have voted for him had I had a Heisman vote ahead of Smitty. Not to say that it wasn't close to me, but I just was absolutely floored at what he was able to accomplish on the football field this year. The leadership and the soft touch on the deep passes and the fact that he generaled a team that was by far the best in the country, never looked back after the Georgia game. And we may never see Alabama dominate anyone like that for an entire season ever again, just because it's that tough. And with all this said, he's a guy that wasn't on the radar last year as far as being a first round pick. And now he is certainly someone that an NFL team would want to take in the first round. He's listed as one of the quarterbacks in a quarterback heavy draft, Tony.
Definitely. I mean, you talked about Mel Kiper earlier. He hasn't gone number 15 overall to the Patriots. I mean, that's the top half of the draft right there. And if he continues to progress well and have a really good offseason, show out in the Senior Bowl practices and in the game, and then also maybe do well in the combine and in the pro day. Look, that 15 pick seems a lot more possible. It also is possible that he could even move up ahead of some of these quarterbacks. I think sometimes he gets put in as the fifth quarterback or the fourth quarterback, but his numbers are there. He looked great at Alabama. If he can prove that he can do all those things without the weapons, I think he could move ahead of some of these guys in the draft, and I think he could be a top 15 pick in the NFL draft, because I think teams go quarterback crazy during the draft, and if they believe in Mac Jones, if he can build up enough believers, he could really vault his status even more. I mean, it's kind of crazy because there were people last year at this time that didn't think he was good enough to be the starter, much less be a top 15 pick in the NFL draft. But if you learned something over the last year, it's just never bet against Mac Jones, and I don't count out anything. I don't count out, him just totally skyrocketing in the next months.
I feel good for him and bad for Joe Burrow. Remember, Joe Burrow was the first pick last year, went to the Bengals. And these two guys kind of remind me of each other. And because Joe Burrow was the first pick, I mean, yeah, you make the first pick money, but you play on an awful team. And, he ends up getting hurt. They got him hurt. They couldn't block for him. And eventually, he ends up with a knee injury and he's done, right? The good thing for Mac, in my estimation, is if he slips back to the Patriots, Bill Belichick's going to make sure that he's protected. If he ends up in New England, it could be a big career difference for him because, you're sliding back to teams that are a better team. They just are looking to fill a need. And this year in the NFL, there are so many different scenarios as far as quarterbacks go, and teams switching quarterbacks. I mean, like established guys, forget about the draft, but, all from, whereas I could think of maybe 10 different teams right off the bat. Not, I guess, Matthew Stafford of the Lions going to a different team is going to be the first shoe to drop, but it's going to be a lot more. So it's very interesting to see where Mac ends up being drafted. And, kind of in my estimation, you feel better for him personally, and as far as his success goes, by being a little bit further back than Joe Burrow last year.
I think, when you look at the Patriots, let's just use that as an example, it'd be a great fit for him. It's a team that, is definitely looking for a quarterback. Actually had some players opt out, so they're probably a little bit better than where they're picking in the draft. They'll get those players back, and they have a ton of cap room. So, I guess from Mac Jones's perspective, if he went to the Patriots, hopefully they would sign, some better targets for him on offense. And then with his defense coming back, I think that team could be a lot better than it was last year, and it'd be really set up for Jones's future. And that could also be a case of, if he goes to one of those better teams, like you said, he could maybe kind of develop more. With the Patriots, I could totally see them drafting Mac Jones, but then maybe also signing a veteran quarterback and then kind of easing Mac Jones into that system, allowing him, to work with Josh McDaniels and really get that system. Mac's a really smart guy too, so I think he's going to pick up any kind of system that he goes in. Patriots being a good example, but other teams as well. If you allow him to kind of develop into the system, I think he could be a really good quarterback. I think with Mac, you're right, or with any quarterback, really, you're right in the fact that you really want them to find that good location, because it really could make those are just still developmental periods in your career where you're really trying to break into the league. And if you're fighting for your life or running away from defensive ends your whole first 2 seasons, it's harder to develop. And so if Mac Jones was to find a team like the Patriots or like some team in the middle of the pack right there, I think he'd probably have a better chance of breaking into the league. So it could, the cards could all fall really well for him.
Great to have you guys with us. This is Bama Factor Daily on the Bama Insider YouTube channel. Some of you may be listening to the podcast. Make sure you give us a 5-star ranking. Do it as you maybe listen on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, but we appreciate it. We're going to drop a podcast every single day. And also right here on YouTube, thumbs up, subscribe to our station. Normally we got a lot of shows that come on at 6, but we wanted to throw one on early in the day. And so we did that midweek here with Tony Tsoukalas, our beat writer at BamaInsider.com, and me, Mick Gillespie. All right, well, let's get into Mel Kiper's big board. It was released on Tuesday, and right now he's got DeVonta Smith second to the Jets. He's got Jalen Waddle going 6th to the Eagles. He's got Patrick Surtain going to the 49ers with the 12th pick. Mac Jones, you mentioned that before, 15th pick to the Patriots. Christian Barmore, 25th pick to the Jaguars. And Najee, 30th pick to the Bills. So I don't know how it's going to really play out, but you're talking about, what is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 first-round picks for the Crimson Tide.
I believe if I counted right, I think it's like 4 in the top 15, which is ridiculous as well. It's never as much as they say it, right? I mean, like we get this every year. It's like 6 Alabama players picked in the first round, 7 Alabama players picked in the first round, and it's really only like 4.
Right.
Some of these guys are first round talents that for whatever reason it won't shake out and they won't be in the first round. But it just shows you the talent that Alabama had on this roster last year and how it really was one of the best college football teams of all time. I like a lot of these picks that Mel brought up. Obviously, I like Mac to the Patriots. I also like Najee to the Bills. Look at a team that needs a running game. That's, you would call a Super Bowl contender that really kind of needs to take its shot because it's a window. You can see how small these windows can be. And I think adding Najee Harris to that mix in Buffalo, man, that could be an exciting thing. And especially a guy, too, that can catch the ball out of the backfield as well. I really like that one. I as from an Alabama perspective, you really got to like Jalen Waddle to the Eagles, because then it could be a Jalen to Jalen situation. That could be fun for a lot of. I think you'll get a lot of Alabama Eagles fans if that happens. Especially if Jalen Hurts sticks at the quarterback position. We've already seen that Jalen Hurts to Jalen Waddle connection a couple of times at Alabama. So it'd be really fun to watch that in the NFL as well.
I'm watching what's going on in Miami. Could Tua be traded by the Dolphins? They have the 3rd pick. They've got a bunch of picks in the NFL draft coming up. But there's been some smoke out of Miami that maybe they're not convinced that Tua's the future, and maybe they trade him somewhere else. I could see that happening. I could also see a scenario where DeVonta Smith slides down to that 3rd spot and is taken by the Dolphins. And wouldn't that be something?
I think that could be something. Yeah, you could have that Tua to Smitty connection in Miami. And another thing too, they have so many picks that, like, we're talking about Najee Harris. Like, what's stopping them from picking Najee Harris at what pick is it, like 20 or 18, right?
Right.
I mean, they've got some picks to play with. So it's definitely interesting to see like what they'll do with it. But yeah, I think a lot of people have them picking DeVonta Smith at number 3. I know their head coach yesterday said that he wasn't really concerned about DeVonta Smith's size either. So he's already talking about DeVonta Smith as well. I'd like to see the Jalen Waddle, Jalen Hurts connection. I'd obviously love to see the Tua DeVonta Smith connection again. Wouldn't it be crazy, Mick, if both of those guys went to, you'd have both of those pairings in the NFL. I mean, that's also possible as well.
Yeah, it'd be hard not to pull for the Dolphins. I mean, I'm a Ravens fan, and they've always had Alabama players all over the place. Going back to Ozzie Newsome being their general manager and one of the greats of all time. And, but this year with Tua, I was watching a lot of Dolphins games, but he wasn't super impressive. I mean, he did win games, but it was their defense that really won games. He didn't look so comfortable at the QB spot, but he was just a rookie and he was coming off of the big injury. There's also, with everything else going on in the NFL, I feel like this is going to be a year where a lot of trades could happen. And I mentioned that before. Aaron Rodgers, after that loss that the Packers had to Tom Brady's Buccaneers, he just seemed like he wasn't never going to play there again in the post-game press conference. And I'm sure he was just disappointed with some of the coaching and the fact that last year, the Packers drafted another quarterback instead of players to help them win. And they ended up in the same exact spot playing for the Super Bowl and came up short and even got a little bit closer, but weren't able to get over the hump. The situation in Houston with Deshaun Watson, he's not real happy with what's going on as far as the head coach and the GM. And, he may want out of town. Could Tua be traded to the Texans for Watson? That's something to keep an eye on. And who knows? I mean, what else could happen? But Trevor Lawrence is, to me, the number 1 pick in the draft. I don't think that I just don't think there's any scenario where the Jaguars don't take him first. Although I've also heard some people saying that they should take Smitty ahead of Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah, no, I would. I mean, if I'm Jacksonville, I'm taking Trevor Lawrence. And that's no slight against Smitty, but I mean, that's the quarterback. I think that's the safe pick. But yeah, you're right about the trades too. I think that there's a lot of possibilities that Tua Texans trade. I'm not sure that's going to happen, but it's kind of funny. We were talking about Tua and Smitty reuniting in Miami. I mean, what happens if Miami trades that number 3 pick and Tua are to Houston for Deshaun Watson? Maybe Houston picks DeVonta Smith, and then we're seeing Tua and Smitty in Houston instead of Miami. So that could happen as well. But there's a lot of things too, and I think that when you talk about people making trades or quarterbacks going different places, that also affects Mac Jones as well, because I think that kind of creates more holes and more openings for him to find a home in the first round. So there's a lot to, I think there's a lot of teams that you got to kind of wait and see how they're going to handle the quarterback position and then how they're going to handle the rest of their rosters as well. But going back to what we said at the beginning of this discussion, I mean, there's like probably 6 or 7 Alabama players that you could really pencil in maybe as a potential first rounder. So it's really, it's really interesting to examine, look at. I think it's going to be a loaded Alabama class, and I think we're going to have a lot of excitement over the next few months.
Yeah, and it's, I mean, as far as the NFL goes, I'm not a super NFL fan, but it's, this time of year and kind of everything that's going on has you excited about, the NFL draft, because there's so many different scenarios that you could possibly have with Alabama. And so many players that we've enjoyed covering. Not to say that we haven't in the past, but I got to tell you, this particular group just has a special spot in my heart. And I guess it's because everything that they went through and the way that they stuck together. And, and then we'll be saying the same thing about next year's team too, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's a machine over here at Alabama. So Nick Saban's putting together top teams after top teams. But this one, I think it will always have a special place in the heart of Alabama fans, because when you look at it, they really lived with this freshman class. It's like they didn't come out of nowhere. Like, this freshman class really helped Alabama, or sorry, not the senior class, really helped Alabama as freshmen during the national championship run in 2017, and so like you knew about Najee Harris, and he had that big fourth quarter. And then obviously Tua and Smitty had the catch, and so during the comeback against Georgia. And so when you're looking at all that, you kind of grew with these players. And by the time that they were seniors, and it was, DeVonta Smith winning the Heisman his senior year at Alabama, I mean, I think the fans were extra connected with this team, maybe more so than they have been in recent years. And I know Alabama fans get connected with every team, but you're right, there's something special about this team just because of how this senior class, how they contributed as freshmen, sophomores, juniors. I know some of them left, but it really was a special team. It was a joy to follow too. Just a bunch of great kids and really so much talent.
He's Tony Tsoukalas. I'm Mick Gillespie. Great to have you here on the Bama Insider YouTube channel as we talk about the Crimson Tide got into the basketball program, and they've won 10 straight, 9-0 in the SEC, looking for their first SEC championship since 2002. And red hot going into a matchup Saturday against Oklahoma. The Senior Bowl is this weekend. Alabama with a bunch of players there trying to impress for the NFL draft, and could have as many as 6 first-round picks. So that leads us here on Bama Factor Daily to our final topic, and that is later today, not too much later though, here shortly. The SEC is going to announce next year's football schedule, and Tony, we'll call you the Swami. You have a pretty good idea, at least you think you do, of what the schedule is going to look like. So give us a preview of what we should expect today.
Now, I don't know, and I'm not making any promises, but we know the non-conference games. So we'll start with that. Before the SEC announces its schedule, we'll start with what we actually know. So September 4th, neutral site, Chick-fil-A kickoff game versus Miami. Okay? We also have September 25th, Southern Miss at home, obviously. And then the interesting thing I was telling you about before we came on air is they've got the November 13th New Mexico State game, followed by the November 20th Mercer game. And that's interesting to me because, when you look at the November schedule, it is kind of weird to have 2 games that are, Nick Saban's not going to like this, but cupcake games in November. So that's kind of an interesting quirk right there, having those back-to-back games that to me look like just right in the win. What I did was I looked at what the schedule was supposed to be like in 2020, before the pandemic, and I used that model. So they were supposed to open up against Georgia during that game. For the SEC conference, they were supposed to open up for Georgia during 2020 before things got switched around. So I changed that to Florida, and then I kept every single SEC game in order of what it was supposed to be in the original 2020 schedule. If that makes sense. If you're still following, I'm going to go through. So the SEC schedule, if I was guessing on that, under that assumption, I think it starts on September 11th at Florida, then would move September 18th home against Ole Miss. Obviously, you'd have that Southern Miss game on the 25th. Then your next SEC game would be home against Arkansas. You'd have at Mississippi State, home against Tennessee on October 16th, third Saturday in October. I think your open week then would come before LSU, as it traditionally does, on the 23rd. I think you'd have LSU a little bit earlier, maybe at October 30th. Then you'd have at Texas A&M on November 6th. Those two easy non-conference games, New Mexico State, Mercer, the 13th and the 20th, before Auburn, at Auburn on the 27th. Now, that is all just a guess, but it kind of corresponds with what it was supposed to be like in 2020 when they kind of scheduled that out. And so I'm calling it an educated guess, but we're not saying that that's going to be the schedule, but that is at least a schedule that, makes sense in a lot of ways.
Right. The funny thing too is, like, we've talked about how next year's schedule is going to be light, but you and I talking about it before the show, I'm kind of starting to think maybe that schedule is going to be pretty tough. I mean, you got Miami on there. You got Miami on there. You got Florida. You got to play at Texas A&M. LSU and Auburn are going to be better next year. So, this is a schedule for a young offensive Alabama team that has some pitfalls. Ole Miss is going to be tough.
Definitely. And if it starts off, let's just say if it did go to the model that I kind of thought up in my head, I mean, you could have Miami and Florida early in the season when the team's still trying to gel. Both those games are kind of tough. And then I think, there's a chance that I have them in back-to-back weeks. Maybe it's not, but you could have LSU and Texas A&M in back-to-back weeks, which could be really tough as well. And then, obviously you have that trip at Auburn, and crazy things happen. In the rivalry, it doesn't seem to be that crazy when it's played in Tuscaloosa, but when it's played in Auburn, anything goes. So it could be a difficult schedule. Maybe potentially even early too.
Yeah, right. It's going to be interesting to see too how the offense looks. Bryce Young, Paul Tyson, who's going to be the quarterback. The offensive line's going to have to be rebuilt. A couple of the receivers who we'll see, but you got all the talent that's coming in from the signing class. Who's going to earn those spots? New running backs. I mean, this is the offense is going to be just absolutely from scratch, except the fact that Saban has Bill O'Brien and Doug Marrone to kind of help with the experience aspect of it. It definitely leaves you kind of scratching your head as to what things are going to look like. Defensively, though, you feel pretty confident that that's going to be Alabama's strength.
Yeah, I do think they're going to lean on the defense, especially early. There's so much talent on the offense, though, that you would think that, if Bill O'Brien can come in and kind of get his scheme together and Alabama, adapts well to that, there's a lot of talent. I mean, look, we've talked about Bryce Young every single show I feel like we've done since the end of the season, and he's a talent. I think he's going to have a really big year. You look at some of these wide receivers they're bringing in, JoJo Earl, big time guy, Christian Leary. I mean, Matt Ray just posted projections of Christian Leary's speed. And one of them, if he goes the ideal route, could see him, eventually break under the 4.2 range in the 40. I mean, stuff like that's just ridiculous. But, they're bringing in some talent. Obviously, you're going to have John Mechie. The running back room is always loaded, and it will be loaded again this year. So, if they get the offensive line sorted out with probably the best offensive line class coming in, they're going to get it figured out. It's just a matter of, can they do it in time? And Alabama is super, they usually do really well at getting these young kids kind of developed early and ready to go by the start of the season. So I don't project this to be any different.
Well, that does it for us, Tony. Any final thoughts? What do you have planned on the BamaInsider.com website?
Yeah, so definitely. I mean, check back. The SEC Network is announcing the SEC schedule, the full conference slate at 2 Eastern, which is 1 Central in Alabama time, and so we'll have coverage of that. I'm pretty excited to see how it plays out. We talked about my little guess. We'll see how correct I am. Probably not even close. But it'd be interesting to see how the schedule plays out, and I'm sure we'll be talking about that in the next few weeks as well.
One more thing, I guess, before we get off here. Apparently, Tennessee has hired Josh Hubble as their head coach. So he's from the same place as the athletic director, right? Central Florida.
Yeah, I mean they're basically becoming the the UCF. They're going to be the Tennessee Knights, I guess, Tennessee Golden Knights or something, Orange Knights. But maybe they'll claim a championship too, because I know Alabama fans will love that.
Yeah. So that just happened, and we appreciate you guys for being with us because this show just happened. I'm Mick Gillespie for Tony Tsoukalas, reminding you to check out BamaInsider.com for all the latest Alabama recruiting news. Still have some more things to drop. We've got Andrew Bone, who updated the actual Alabama signing class, which is the highest rated class in the history of Rivals, and just seems to get better every time we turn around. Kyle Henderson's on here, and for the entire crew, I'm Mick Gillespie. Thanks for hanging out with us. Make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel. Give us a thumbs up, and we'll talk to you really soon. Roll Tide, everybody.